We ready? Excellent. Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is November 9th, 2023, and this is case DCI 2023-00018. It's a rezoning request from the AOPD and IL district to be a combined AOPD. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll provide is the truth? Yes. Okay, thank you. I don't see any members of the public here, so I will dispense with those instructions and we can begin with the applicant when you're ready. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Martin. I'm a planner with Johnson Engineering. I have been previously accepted as an expert before the hearing examiner and would request to do so today.
Thank you.
Would you like a copy of my resume on
If we
here?
have it on file and it hasn't been updated, then I don't need another. If it's been updated, I'll
I
accept
think
it.
it has been.
Okay, then yes, I will. And that would be applicant's
Yours
exhibit
been
1.
updated? I'll just
I
turn-
updated it.
It's yours as well or just hers?
I have mine, or is anybody who intends to possibly speak today?
Okay, if they're all updated, let me do this as a composite then. We'll accept them separately in our database, but I just want to be sure I've got them. So there's 4 pages or 4 individuals covered?
Yes.
Okay, so that will be applicant's exhibit 1, a composite. And I do have applicant exhibit A being the 48-hour letter. I received that as well.
Perfect.
Okay,
So also with me here today, we have representatives from the applicant. We have Alicia Dixon, the Director of Planning and Environmental Compliance, and Ian Saconian, Airport Planner. With Johnson Engineering, we have Laura Dijon. She's a planner and the Director of our Planning and Landscape Architecture Department, and Gary Nychek, who is a certified ecologist with Johnson. Pagefield General Aviation Airport lies both within the city of Fort Myers and unincorporated Lee County. The site is bound by Cleveland Avenue, North Airport Road, Danley Drive, and a drainage canal, and is located within the South Fort Myers planning community. Pagefield has a lengthy history. It came into service as an airport in 1927. The land was deeded from the city of Fort Myers to Lee County in the 1940s. It served as a training base during World War II until 1945 and was the area's primary airport for air travel and transportation from the mid-1950s until 1983. And that's when Southwest Florida Airport took over servicing of commercial airlines. Pagefield is owned by the Lee County Board of County Commissioners and is operated by the Lee County Port Authority under the direction of the Lee County Board of Port Commissioners. The airport is included in the U.S. Department of Transportation's National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems and the Florida Aviation System Plan. The national plan designates Pagefield as a public use general aviation reliever airport. In this role, Pagefield relieves the general aviation demands on Southwest Florida International Airport and helps provide a balance of air travel efficiency and capacity in our area. Additionally, Pagefield is governed by FDOT, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Pagefield Airport Master Plan, the Airport Layout Plan, the Lee Plan, and the Land Development Code. The airport has a lengthy zoning history dating back to 1997, but the most relevant zoning history begins with Z11013, which rezoned over 563 acres to Airport Operations Plan Development, or AOPD. This zoning approval was amended several times, and I can go into more detail if you like, but most recent history is here. This rezoning will be a replacement and recodification of the zoning resolutions outlined here. The majority of Pagefield is within Lee County and is zoned AOPD. The 2.5 acres on the southeastern corner is zoned light industrial and is proposed to be included in the AOPD boundary. The site is surrounded by developed parcels with predominantly commercial and industrial zoning designations within Lee County and the city of Fort Myers. Neighbors on the western boundary within Lee County are zoned commercial, C1 and C2, and parcels within the city of Fort Myers are developed with various heavy commercial and industrial uses. Properties to the east include light industrial, intensive commercial, and community commercial zoning within the county, but there are residential uses within the vicinity of Pagefield just to the east of Metro Parkway. The southern boundary is along the Page Park Community Plan area, and these parcels have various zoning designations, including 2-family conservation district, light industrial, and general commercial within the county. Pagefield is within the airport future land use designation. The 2.5 acres on the southeastern side of the airport that's proposed to be included in the AOPD boundary is within the industrial future land use designation. As evaluated and discussed in the consistency narrative, the airport related use of this parcel will remain consistent with the industrial future land use category. Surrounding neighbors within the city of Fort Myers limits have a corridor commercial future land use designation, and the neighboring parcels within Lee County are designated as public facilities, central urban, intensive development, and industrial. This request is going to be divided into 3 sections. First, we are requesting to remove 1.5 acres that have been released for the County Brooks parking lot, and incorporating 2.5 acres located at the southeast corner along Danley Drive by rezoning from light industrial to AOPD. This acquired parcel is designed as a part of the current Southeast Quad Hangar Development Project, that is Development Order DOS 2022-00018, and it's intended to accommodate a water management detention area. This property is currently zoned light industrial and is required to be rezoned to AOPD per Land Development Code. This will revise the AOPD boundary from 563.65 acres to 564.6 acres. Second, updates are proposed to the master concept plan, development schedule, and schedule of uses, which I'm going to detail here in a moment. And lastly, we have some existing deviations that are proposed for revision, and 3 new deviations are proposed. So revising the boundary. To the southeast here, we can see where the Port Authority has released the 1.5 acres to Lee County for the parking lot associated with Brooks Park. And to the southwest is the 2.5 acres north of Danley Drive, subject to this rezoning. The next set of changes is to the master concept plan. Sheet 2, the detail sheet, has now been eliminated. All pages are updated to incorporate the new boundary. This is sheet 1 of the new plan. It's been simplified to display 3 sub-areas based on the FMY airport layout plan. These areas include the building restriction line and runway protection zone, which is shown in this large waffle hatching, and then the extended polka dot hatched areas that go beyond the runways. The aviation development areas are displayed in the heaviest hatched, and they generally surround the runway areas. And then the non-aviation development areas are displayed with a simple angled hatching, which includes Pagefield Commons, Pagefield Medical Office, Aldi's, and Site 5. This is now sheet 2, and it has been revised to show the updated boundary. And sheet 3 has the revised open space calculations and diagram based on the new AOPD acreage. We've also added a buffer typical that is provided for the 7.5 foot wide buffer with double row hedge along South Airport Road. Updates were made to the development schedule to make it easier to implement. The changes reflect current conditions for 2023 in the existing column, and then the maximum column was consolidated so that the maximum totals are now more clear. There was some math going on there before, and we've just simplified it. The maximum allowable development did not change, except for aprons and ramps was rounded up to 250,000 square yards, and then 33 additional hangars are proposed to be consistent with the master plan and the anticipated needs at the airport. Some minor revisions are proposed to the schedule of uses, and these include clarifications in the column headings, a cross-reference to the Land Development Code, and allowing construction trailers in the Pagefield Commons industrial area. 2 other changes include adding vertical takeoff and landing as a type of airport operations facility, and allowing freight and cargo handling establishments in non-aviation parcel 5. Deviations 1 through 15 are already approved and adopted in zoning resolution Z11013. These deviations relate to shoreline structure, intersection separation, development area calculations, signage, fences, and buffers. Deviation 16 is for lighting standards and was approved in ADD 2018-10067. We are proposing to revise deviations 2, 12, 14, and 15, and proposing 3 new deviations, 17, 18, and 19, that will accommodate unique site conditions and reduce wildlife attractants within the aviation development area. Deviation 2 is revised to allow a 20-foot setback for the pond at the eastern property line that's associated with the South Quad Hangar Development Project. This deviation will allow the pond to remain as proposed in DOS 2022-00111. Required water management areas must be positioned at the perimeter of the site for safety and functionality, and this deviation as proposed meets the general intent of the code and protects the public health, safety, and welfare. Deviation 12 revisions are to remove compensating planting requirements related to buffers in the runway protection zone. This deviation was adopted in Z11013 and requires compensating planting to be provided elsewhere on the property. This has been difficult to implement due to the site constraints and limitations of the airport. There are no areas for additional plantings considering the safety needs and the requirement to minimize wildlife hazards. So we've worked closely with staff to come up with this language to minimize wildlife attractants and minimize safety and security risks within the aviation area while protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Deviation 14 was also approved in Z11013 and applied to the Brooks Park property that's now been released from airport ownership. The revision details the buffer requirements where South Airport Road has been constructed. The 7.5-foot wide buffer with a double row hedge along the right-of-way meets the intent of the code and allows the location of development and buffers in a way that minimizes airspace impact. Deviation 15 was also approved by Z11013 to allow no buffers to be a hazard to aviation and is intended to protect the public health, safety, and welfare by minimizing wildlife attractants and safety and security risks within the AOPD. The request is to remove the requirement for compensating plantings as it's been difficult to implement. In the 12 years since the adoption of this ordinance, instances of hazardous landscape removal has been rare, and the site is just restricted to provide those compensating plantings. The proposed revision recognizes the unique characteristics and conditions on Page Field and maintains a requirement for notification to Lee County staff, which continues to aid in the protection of the public's health, safety, and welfare interests. Deviation 17 is new. It's proposed to reduce the building perimeter planting requirements from 10 to 2.5% of the building gross ground floor area. Although this is a new deviation for Page Field, we've already worked closely with staff to evaluate, and it's been applied to the Southwest Florida International Airport as well. This deviation protects the health, safety, and welfare by providing visibility and safety in proximity to aircraft movement areas and minimizes wildlife attractants on airport property. Deviation 18 allows no buffering between individual development sites within the aviation development area only. Again, staff supports this deviation language that's also been adopted and applied to Southwest Florida International Airport. Deviation 19 is new. This will reduce plantings from 1 tree per 250 square feet to allow 1 tree per 1,000 square feet of internal planting area within or adjacent to the aviation development area. This deviation request has also been applied to Southwest Florida International Airport already. The purpose of this deviation is to decrease hazardous wildlife attractants such as trees near and on airport property. This deviation accommodates the intent of the Land Development Code while balancing health, safety, and welfare protections that are unique to airfield adjacent areas. On to consistency. The current boundary is within the airport land's future land use designation. and the 2.5 acre parcel along Danley Drive is within the Industrial Development Future Land Use designation. The site will continue to support the intent of these categories by supporting the general aviation industry and strengthening the county's economic base. Objectives 2.1 and 2.2 encourage growth in urban areas where adequate facilities exist and where contiguous development can occur. The airport is an already developed facility with existing and supporting infrastructure in place, and the additional parcel subject to this rezoning is immediately east of the AOPD boundary. Adequate utility service is provided to Page Field from Lee County and the City of Fort Myers as indicated in the service availability letters provided. Policy 5.15 intends to protect existing and future residential areas from encroachment. Page Field has been operating since the 1920s and will remain compatible with the surrounding area. Goals 46 and 47 seek to develop, maintain, and facilitate a coordinated system of aviation facilities. The proposed additions will continue to enhance and support the existing and planned aviation and non-aviation uses within Page Field. Policy 125.1.2 requires development to not degrade surface and groundwater quality. Stormwater infrastructure has been developed and is consistent with the required state permitting. The additional 2.5 acres subject to this rezoning is anticipated to enhance the stormwater requirements associated with the South Quad Hangar project.
Not to interrupt you, that's the entire purpose of this parcel, correct? It's essentially serving as the drain, and it's already operational since it was acquired, or will that come after the zoning?
Well, the DO has been approved is my understanding, but we're just waiting for the zoning before construction can take place.
Okay, thank you.
And then goal 158 aims to maintain a diversified and stable economy by providing a positive business climate that assures maximum employment opportunities. This rezoning request supports additional opportunities within the airport, which helps to facilitate a positive business climate. The proposed zoning request will meet the criteria established in Land Development Code Section 34-145-D4 for granting a rezoning, including complying with the LEAP plan. The request meets Land Development Code standards with deviations as requested that promote the intent of the code to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. This rezoning request is compatible with existing commercial and industrial uses in the surrounding area. The proposed master concept plan provides sufficient access to support the project, and the airport is a part of the transportation network facility. Most of the subject property has been previously cleared or developed for airport purposes and does not contain any environmentally critical areas. And finally, Page Field is connected to urban services as demonstrated. Additionally, the Land Development Code requires that planned developments meet additional criteria. The site is an existing airport facility surrounded by commercial and industrial uses, making the proposed uses appropriate for this location. Each deviation request enhances the objective of the PUD and promotes the intent of the code to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The recommended conditions are just carried forward from the previously adopted zoning actions and primarily focus on compliance with FAA regulations and reducing wildlife hazards, which provides safeguards to the public interest. We are proposing a few revisions to staff's recommended conditions, which I'm going to outline now, and they're all in your 48-hour notice. We do agree with the conditions proposed by staff with these revisions is outlined. I'm just going to review the conditions that were in your 48-hour notice that require changes. Condition 5, staff has proposed alternative littoral planting design criteria that is consistent with the Land Development Code. However, it is inconsistent with the previously adopted Condition 5 from Z1113 and is inconsistent with deviations 5, 6, and 7, which provide relief for fewer plantings, steeper slopes, and 100% riprap. So we are proposing to restore this condition as previously approved in Z1113, as displayed here and in your 48-hour notice.
On that one, it didn't show, so I appreciate the slide because it didn't show the language from what was B through D is remaining. They're just being renumbered.
I'm sorry, I
On
didn't
this
understand.
condition, there was it was B, C, and D, and you haven't underlined or crossed those out. So those are being retained, they're just changing the numbering, and you're adding A and B and C.
So we're proposing to have it as it was originally approved in Z1113. So the strike through A is what staff proposed, and we're proposing to strike that through and include A, B, and C, which was previously approved.
And then retain D, E, and F, as they
Yes.
would be numbered now. Okay, thank you.
In condition 7, staff proposes to keep the language as it was adopted in Z11013. The requirements stated in conditions 7C and D relate to providing buffer plantings in the runway protection zones within 2 and 5 years of zoning approval. As outlined in the staff report, buffers have been installed along the west side of the airfield as contemplated at the time of approval of Z1113, making conditions 7C and D outdated. Additionally, we are requesting to cross-reference deviation 12, which provides details for plantings in the runway protection zone. And lastly, ordinance Z1113 adopted condition 15 to resolve conflicts between regulations. We are proposing to restore this condition as it's already been approved in Z1113 to allow FAA policies, advisories, and regulations to control any conflicts. Again, that specific language is in your 48-hour notice in here. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. With staff support and in my expert opinion, the requested rezoning change from light industrial to airport operations plant development is appropriate at this location. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do you have a hard copy of your PowerPoint?
Do.
I appreciated the visual showing the removal and the addition. I couldn't really find that anywhere in my materials, and so I'm curious. I just want to be clear. Can you go back to that slide?
Yes.
Looks like it's slide 8.
Just talking about the properties.
I'm sorry.
The properties.
The property boundaries, I think it's slide 8.
He's got control over there.
Thank you. The magic is happening. Okay, so the lower southeastern portion, that's what's being referred to as the remnant parcel once it's removed? Or is this something else?
Southwestern.
Western, but the southeast, I'm sorry, so yes, thank you, southwestern. That's being referred to as the remnant parcel that will retain the AOPD zoning unless and until it's rezoned to something else. But that's being used currently now as a parking lot
Yes.
for a county park facility? Okay. And then the eastern portion that you're adding, it's going to be or it's serving the surface water management system, but it's not functional yet until we get through the zoning today.
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any information generally on how the conveyance system is working? I mean, is it going to radically alter what's happening right now with stormwater management? There was a narrative in the materials, but it didn't detail too much about it. I don't need a great amount of detail, but just to know that it's going to function the same, better, worse after the fact.
So for the record, Laura DeJohn with Johnson Engineering. The one thing I just want to clarify, because I was able to visually speak across the room to Alicia from the Port Authority, and that southeast quad hangar project we're discussing is actually in preliminary construction already. So the development order evaluations have all gone through. There's been all the assessment done and the permitting done to evaluate and confirm that the water management system proposed for that southeast quad is sufficient and not going to be in any way disruptive to anything else on the property.
Thank you. I believe that was the extent of the questions that I had going, so I'm ready for the staff now, if you're ready. Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you.
Dirk Danley, Lee County Zoning Principal Planner. I've previously been accepted as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code. Lee Plan would like to do so again today.
Yes, thank you.
Before I even get started, do you prefer 2 copies? I know the other hearing examiner prefers 2, so she can scratch on one. I don't know if it,
Yes, it's better to have it, because there are certain cases where I get very note-taking, for lack of a better term.
Understood.
Other ones I don't, but yes, I appreciate it. It keeps it a little cleaner on our end for the record. So this will be Staff Exhibit 2, because Staff Exhibit 1 was the staff report. Thank you.
I'll try to not repeat what was provided in the applicant's presentation. To whatever extent I can, they did provide a very complete presentation. I don't think there needs to be much added to it. But just to start out with, we'll have a little discussion later on in the presentation about that remnant parcel, just to put some testimony out there on how we have interpreted the way to address it. But there is the addition of the property and a release of another, and then some other minor changes to the master concept plan. And really, this is just a cleanup aside from the release of those release and addition of those 2 properties. This is the boundary. The applicant did provide a good example, but this is the piece to be released, and here is the piece being added in. To speak a little bit to it, there's a redevelopment effort happening between this area and this area. And with that, they just had to update some stormwater calculations, and I believe the stormwater being added here is just cleaning that up with the state. This is the master concept plan the applicant's gone through at length, so I won't belabor it, but the medical village is up here, the retail area, Pagefield Commons is here, Aldi down to the south, and then the remainder of it is the Pagefield aviation areas. There has been a significant history of aviation use on this property. They did a great job explaining that. I don't think I need to go into it anymore, but there are a handful of ADDs that are being codified into this proposed resolution, or the proposed conditions as we have them written. Trying to work with what was approved in Z1113 and update it with these and the proposed changes they have today. The applicant's gone through the decision-making criteria. I won't go through them at length, but staff does find we are meeting those decision-making criteria. We've listed them out in the land develop or in our staff staff report, and we're going to continue with that stance that they are meeting those requirements. Just to speak a little bit on the Lee plan analysis, I used the zoning because it popped a little better on the presentation, but this area here is in the industrial development future land use category. The way that the language is written speaks to increasing the county's economic base as it grows, and the airport industry is certainly part of that economic base, and that mixed with the policy 2.1.3, which considers public uses and facilities within all land use categories. Staff finds that the piece that's getting incorporated into the AOPD to be consistent with the industrial development future land use category. And then everything else that's in the airport lands future land use category is continuing to remain consistent with that future land use category. These are a little bit interesting to review because we are considering this as a new rezoning, but this is something that's been in existence and is really changing quite minimally as a result of this rezoning. But in terms of objective 2.1 and 2.2, this is an infill redevelopment project of sorts. There are urban services available to the site. They have been for many years, and they will continue to be consistent with objectives 2.1 and 2.2. In terms of the residential uses, there's really just a few of them to the south, and then once you get further out, not necessarily adjacent, but the impact of an airport is a lot larger than just what's adjacent to it. Those areas have experienced the operations of the airport continually for decades, and will continue to have been previously found to be consistent or compatible with the area, and staff's opinion is they will remain compatible with this rezoning. The applicant did go through this, but the existing airport does play an important role in the coordinated system of the rail, although not much of it, aviation, ports, and roads, and the continuing modernization of this airport, as it is an older airport, only benefits that coordination. The staff does find it consistent with Goal 46 and 47. Water quality, they do have the appropriate permitting with the state. They're continuing to have to meet those requirements. As the applicant stated, they are going through the development order process. I believe it's been issued and they are working on some of those items already, but they will continue to have to meet the requirements of Goal 125. And then just going back to the importance of the airport as it pertains to the economy of Lee County, anything to expand or at least maintain what's already there does promote a more diversified economy in Lee County. Just to put on the record what's going on with this remnant parcel, it doesn't have any development potential. It's not going to be included in the master concept plan, but the legal description of the plan development will include this piece, and with the condition that was proposed by staff, basically locks it in there as having a zoning district assigned to it, but no development potential. And moving forward, Parks and Rec is aware that if they were to do anything with that parcel, we had a coordination meeting just to clarify that something was going to need to take place from a zoning action. We're not 100% sure yet on the whether or not a comp plan will be necessary, simply because with 2.1.3 as it's applied to this one would also apply to that public facilities are really considered in all future land use categories. So it would likely be dependent on what type of use they propose, if at any time they do propose any type of redevelopment effort on the site.
But for now, in the immediate future, the intention is to continue using it as a parking facility for the park?
Correct.
Thank you.
The applicant went over the 3 deviation requests that were new. There were several that were amended, as they've already discussed, and these are just to promote additional compliance with FAA moving forward and their requirements for wildlife attractants. We do recommend approval of these 3. In terms of the changes to the, or changes proposed by the 48-hour letter, staff does agree with the changes. We don't have any issue with what they're proposing. And with that, staff recommends approval, and we're here with any questions you may have.
Just a curiosity, because you did mention a few times it's a full rezoning rather than an amendment. Was there a reason that that was required?
Generally speaking, we don't have any provisions in our code to add lands to the legal description of the boundary.
Essentially.
And so we're running into more of these. There are very limited circumstances where it's been considered an amendment, but typically once land's being added to something, particularly when there's development associated with it, then it would be considered full rezoning.
That was why this one's not as clear, because you've got the swap, and so it's less than an acre, or maybe around an acre net, and there isn't really development happening on that piece that they're adding. It's really serving. So I just wanted to ask if that was.
Yeah, and we have the ability to remove things administratively from a PD that doesn't increase the development on the site. Typically, though, that's associated with another rezoning. But in terms of the addition, I believe what ends up happening is I don't have the development order plans in front of me now, but I believe that some of the stormwater retention had to be shifted to that right with what the redevelopment efforts are doing to that southern area. And so a use is all the pieces of the use. And so if it was just an open space area where they were already exceeding their open space, then maybe we could have done that administratively or as an amendment. But in this case, because it was somewhat associated to use, we erred on the side of being conservative and going through the full rezoning on it.
Thank you. I reviewed all of these materials. So again, I appreciate the reading material, and I feel like I'm well informed on all of this. Is there a timing component with the DO that's pending? Do you need the recommendation released in a certain time frame?
So there's a provision of the land, sorry, Laura to John. There's a provision of the Land Development Code that allowed the simultaneous processing of the DO subject to zoning action being underway. And that simultaneous window where construction can occur while a pending zoning action is occurring was a 6-month period. So the the general timeframe was to get to the board by the end of this year. And I guess we'll kind of be in a close call as far as meeting that precise language of the code.
Yeah, I think it's 180 days, and I didn't know when that clock started. I don't think with our release schedule, when I last looked at it, I think things that would be released today would be on the first December hearing, so I don't know that there's opportunity to get to the final one. But if that's an urgent matter, I can double check on that, if that's the
Yeah.
timing that we're under. Okay. So
I'm
you're
sure, I think Anthony Rodriguez is the designee who has the authority to allow activity to be occurring, so maybe Anthony Rodriguez would be the right person to confirm that he's, that he knows what the window is and that he's covered.
And that provision usually isn't executed unless there is some certainty that,
there would be approval at the end of the line.
right, and in this case, the project has already been approved for such a long time. It's just a piece of it that is going through this change.
It's very straightforward. Again, I appreciate it, and everyone involved did a fantastic job. Thank you for that, making a very complete record. So I'll make every effort to expedite it as quickly as I can and try to get it out as quickly as I can. And again, there's no members of the public to go through those instructions, so I can wrap up the hearing unless there was anything prior that either party wanted to put on the record.
No.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. I appreciate it. Please stay well and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.